In today's video, we will talk all about the Bitcoin golden cross signal that has just fired today. In fact, this morning when the daily candle closed. So a lot of people are covering this scenario. And I know this has been way overdone already, but I think there's a lot of misconception out there because this golden cross signal for the long term is a very bullish signal. However, in the short term, it doesn't mean it is a buy now type of opportunity for a short-term trade. And you can look at the data for this exactly to see what has happened in the previous golden crosses to know how to use this signal directly. And that's why we are going to cover this today. Okay, if you're new here to the channel, welcome. My name is Dennis. I'm a crypto angel investor, and I have invested in over 100 crypto startups in the past 5 years. On this channel, I share my views on market trends and investing strategy to build wealth in crypto. Okay, so let's get into the Bitcoin signal that I'm talking about. So you most likely have heard of this signal before, the golden cross, the death cross, multiple times before. And specifically this week, you most likely have seen a lot of videos, a lot of articles about this. Now, let me just show you exactly what this signal is first. So a golden cross pattern is a momentum pattern that shows that a golden cross is the bullish one that shows that a long-term bullish uptrend is starting, whereas a death cross, its counterpart, shows the long-term bearish trend is likely starting. So this signal is very simple. It consists of taking the short-term moving average. We say short-term, but it's really not that short. It's a 50-day moving average. And then combine it with a longer-term moving average, the 200-day moving average. And when you combine these two charts, you get something like this, which is this indicator you can already find on TradingView. Just type in golden cross and you'll see it. So here we have the two lines. The blue line that follows the price candles much more closely is the short-term 50-day moving average. And then you have the red line. This is the 200-day long-term moving average. So what a golden cross is, if we go to today's chart, is simply when a short-term moving average, this blue average line, crosses over the long-term moving average, this red 200-day moving average. When this happens, typically this signals the start of a new uptrend. And similarly, the death cross is simply when the short-term moving average blue line crosses below the long-term average, the red line, which signals chances are there is a downtrend that is potentially starting. Now, okay, knowing this, let's look at the historical times that this signal has played out. So this signal doesn't fire that often. In fact, it doesn't really fire on trending periods because, well, in a specific, when we are already in a raging bull market, then the two moving averages would just both trend up. And similarly, in a very clear bear market, the two moving averages would trend down together, so they wouldn't cross over. But when the market is just about to turn around, or when it's in a sideways period, that's usually when this bullish death cross, bullish golden cross or bearish death cross comes to play. Okay, now let's look at the historical times that it has fired. So before we get into this, I highly recommend you to go watch this Bitcoin golden cross formation video from Invest Answers. In fact, I think he has the most unbiased opinion on this specific signal, and he has covered it before. He has covered the death cross as well, which is the exact same indicator, but just using the other crossover. So right away from his analysis here, you see that typically if you enter into Bitcoin, every time that a long-term golden cross has flashed a buy signal, and then you exit at the next time that a death cross signal happens, then you have a really good ROI. So you see here, in the first signal that it fired, if you bought on the golden cross in 2012 and you sold on the death cross in 2024, that would have been an 8,000% return. Similarly, this would have been a really good position from the 2015 to 2018 bull market, which yielded a 2,000% return. And then in 2019, 67%, 2020, 290%. Now, sometimes this signal does become a sort of fake out, as you can see in 2021 to 2022, where there was actually a minus 10% return. And then from 2023, well, there's only 11% return. I believe this is from the beginning of the year until September when the rally officially ended. Okay, so let's visualize this on the chart as well. So here is the first time that let me use a different color. Let me use maybe green. Yeah. No. Just going to do like purple here. Nope. Okay, here. So this is when the first golden cross signal fired. If you place the long here, like this signal typically tells you to, and then you exit it at the next time that the death cross signal happened, which told you to sell. Let's just fact check this. Doing a price percentage here, that is actually even higher than Invest Answers percentages. That is almost 100x gain. Now, obviously, this is early stages of Bitcoin, so maybe that's different, right? Then let's look at the next time that this signal fired in the here. So between 2014, there is a small period where this signal, the golden cross did fire, but then the death cross fired right after. So you see in July to August 2014. So this yielded a negative 10% return. Not too dramatic. Even if you bought here and sold here, not too big of a deal. Then the next time around, you see here, there was another fake out right here when the signal told us to buy very early in July 2015. And then, well, Bitcoin had one last crash in that bear market, and the price came down to, what is this? 20% loss. But then when the bull market actually started, you see there is another golden cross right here. And if you just kept following the same signal because you know eventually it will work over the long term, well, this led you to a much more significant gain, because this eventually led to, this was essentially the start of the 2016 to 2018 bull market. And this crossover never happened again until the bull market officially ended in March 2018. So if you had bought in the 2015 golden cross in October 2015, and then you sold at the next death cross in 2018, April 2018, that would have been a 35x gain. So you would have caught majority of the last bull market. And then again, you see in 2019, so here, if you had bought at this golden cross and then you sold at this death cross, that would have yielded a return of, well, this is kind of a small bear market rally. So that was a 74% return. Okay. And then there was another fake out in the 2020 bear market where the signal did fire, but very similar to 2015, there was another one last crash in the bear market. And then price came down, then eventually it bounced back. And then the next time that this signal fired, well, this was another great buying opportunity, because this would have made you catch majority of the 2020 bull run. So you would have entered into Bitcoin around $8,000 and been able to exit around $43,000. So it would have been really good. Actually, no, that's not 8,000. That's right here. 9,000 to 43,000. About a 4x gain. So overall, you kind of see a pattern going on here. Whenever you use this golden cross signal, you have to pair it with a death cross signal together. This is the number one thing. If you only use the golden cross as somewhat of a super bullish signal and then you just buy in, but you don't know when the next death cross is, and then you don't follow that signal strictly, well, that leads you to potential ruins, because sometimes you will buy into one of these short-term traps where the golden cross happens, but then another death cross very quickly happens and the short-term rally reverses. So that's number one thing. In order to use this signal over the long term, you need to take into account both the golden cross and the death cross. And because we're overall bullish on Bitcoin and crypto, the idea is you use this as a long-term signal, and then you buy at every golden cross, and then you sell at every death cross, strictly, right? And you have to keep in mind that this is a long-term signal. So that's number one. Number two is that, well, it would help to have a sense of where the market currently is in order to best take advantage of this signal. So what I mean by that is, if you look at the historical returns of this signal of buying at the golden cross and selling at the death cross, well, the best returns of this signal happens usually during the bull market, the bear market period, but towards the end of the bear market. So towards the end of the bear market, when you know the sentiment is already starting to pick up again, and then when the golden cross flashes, well, chances are that is a higher chance to lead to a new uptrend, new bull market. Versus if you follow this signal very strictly, right, after a bull run finishes. So for example, here in 2014, right, when you know that we already have had 2 years of bull run and price has had a crazy run up, I don't even know how much this is. This is essentially 100x. Then when you still try to consider these golden cross and death cross scenarios, well, it's better to keep a grain of salt because chances are this is most likely a short-term rally, and eventual bear market still has to come. So this plays really well when you combine it with the 4-year cycles. And then similarly, right, in 2015, you see that in the early stages of the bear market, well, sure, in July 2015, maybe this could have been the start of the bull run, so you could enter here, and then as long as you kept following the signal, you would have taken one short-term loss of negative 20%, but the next time this signal flashed, well, that was essentially much closer to the next Bitcoin halving, so this led to a very clear bull run after, right? And then, very similarly to the 2020 bear market, where this signal flashed twice, but the second time it flashed, it eventually led to the bull run starting. So this is the second thing to consider, which is which period of the 4-year cycle we are in, and when to best use this golden cross signal. So here is another example that puts this much clearer. So dating back to recent times in 2021. So take a trip down memory lane to 2021, right? We just had a huge bull run from 2020 when Bitcoin was at $6,000 to $8,000 from the pandemic, and then Bitcoin rallied all the way up to $64,000, right? $64,000 the first time. It already came crashing down once. So now, the next time that this golden cross flashed right here when Bitcoin was at 45,000, well, you could take this signal with a grain of salt, because you know that we already have had a 1.5-year bull run. The chances of this leading to a continued bull run, essentially a super cycle, another bull run on top of this, is much lower. So this is what I mean. You want to use this golden cross, death cross signal when the timing is right. So you want to treat the golden cross more seriously when we are in the bull market, in the bear market, And then in the last stages of the bear market, when the golden cross comes, well, that is when you want to really pay attention. So this is why the current golden cross we just had on Bitcoin this morning or yesterday is very significant, because we already have had 2 years of bear market, right? If you count, let's say, the last time that the death cross came out, which was January of 2022. So from January 2022 until now, that is already a year and a half, almost 2 years. And now after this entire downtrend, right, Bitcoin has had its rally up and now is really starting to show its significant strength again. So this is why I think this golden cross here has a lot of weight. It's very likely to be leading to a potential a new uptrend. Also take into account, we already have had one cycle of golden cross leading to a death cross in the past year also. So beginning of 2023, we had a golden cross when Bitcoin was at $22,000, and then another death cross at 27.5. So that kind of bear market rally also has been completed once already, very similar to the last two Bitcoin cycles. So that's number two thing. Number three, when you look at golden cross, right? When so many people look at golden cross out there and they follow, YouTube channels, news outlets, way too often they use this signal as a short-term trade signal, and this is completely wrong. So here is an example, right? So Invest Answers posted about this on Twitter. Golden cross, potential, powerful golden cross coming, really good long-term buying opportunity, right? But then you will often have people saying, well, golden cross is actually the reverse. It's very bearish. And interesting, a death cross is bullish. So why do they say this, right? Which is really true? Let's look at this on the chart as well. So the golden cross can only happen when the 50-day moving average crosses over the 200-day moving average, right? This means there has to be a short-term price move to the upside in order for this crossover to happen very clearly. This is a criteria. So this is why if you use this golden cross and death cross signal as a short-term trade signal, you are most likely going to get burnt. Because every time that the golden cross happens, well, on the short term, that means a short-term rally has just played out, and Bitcoin most likely have pumped in 1 to 2 weeks period. So if you try to chase this rally and try to long right now, chances are you're going to get burnt on the next pullback, simply because, well, this very strong rally we just had in the past 2 weeks is due for a correction, right? But albeit a short-term correction. Similarly, when you look at a death cross, right, the one that we had right here, for example, well, how did this death cross come to play? This death cross could have only happened when Bitcoin has had a short-term downward momentum. You see, this was when Bitcoin came down from 29K with a very sharp move and touched all the way down to 25K. That's why when you look at this death cross and you say, oh, this is a death cross signal, so I'm going to trade this as a short-term signal and short Bitcoin right now, you will most likely get burnt. Because when this death cross had happened, that was 2 weeks after the short-term downward momentum has just played out. So that's why Bitcoin, no matter what the long-term might look like, it was due for a short-term bounce. After Bitcoin had this major downtrend, well, it was due for a short-term bounce, right? Very simple. This is the reason why so many people, when they look at this bullish golden cross and bearish death cross, and they try to go into it and trade it as a short-term signal, they get burnt. Because this really is not meant as a short-term signal. In fact, if you really, really want to trade this, well, it's better to bet against it on a very short term instead of following it. That is true. However, I don't use this golden cross and death cross signal for short-term trading at all, because that defeats the whole purpose, right? It's really, we're looking at two very long-term moving averages, 50-day moving average and 200-day moving average. And in order for this signal to happen, there has to be multiple years of price action. Keep this in mind, right? And this signal only flashes 4 to 6 times every cycle. So if you use this as a short-term signal, defeats the whole purpose. It's not meant to be used that way. And this is why, so many people treat this golden cross, death cross more like a RSI trading signal, telling them, Bitcoin is overbought in the short term and oversold in the short term. That's just the wrong way of using it, wrong way of looking at it. You're much better off looking at actually RSI or MACD. Those kind of indicators will be much better fit for that kind of trade, short-term trading. So that's why this kind of sentiment is, I get where it's coming from, but it is not accurate, right? It comes from the misuse of this golden cross and death cross signal. Okay, so now we have covered everything, right? We have covered what the golden cross, death cross is, how it typically leads to really good returns as long as you follow this trading strategy, which is very long-term, right? Keep this in mind, that this signal is very long-term, and you buy at the golden cross, accumulate for a long-term bag, no leverage, just buying Bitcoin spot, and then you sell right after, you sell at the next death cross after you have bought on the previous golden cross. Then on average, right, according to Invest Answers research, the returns would have been really good. Even when the signal doesn't work out, you only lose out maybe 10. We have seen 20% even when we had the Black Swan event during 2020. So even in that case, the downside was like 20%. But the gains are massive because when you follow this strictly, you can actually catch on to each bull run and catch the majority of the bull run. That's how you use the golden cross and death cross signals. Okay. So last bit of rant, I think it's very cool that how the golden cross actually uses these two averages, the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average, because the 200-day moving average typically acts as the long-term support level in a Bitcoin bull market as well, and it acts as the long-term resistance level in a Bitcoin bear market. So that means this red average line that we see on the chart here, typically you can use this as an indicator to see if we are if Bitcoin is in a medium to long-term bull trend or medium to long-term bear trend. So whenever Bitcoin is above this red average line and it's bouncing from it, you see in March this year, in June this year, it came down towards it, but it bounced from it. As long as it's doing this, you can rest assured that Bitcoin is in an uptrend. And once Bitcoin comes down below it, see, this is what we had in August, right? Bitcoin dropped down below it and closed below it. And then the next time it touched it, it was starting to get rejected by this 200-day moving average. This was when the period when I'm not personally so sure about Bitcoin. And you see this was from August until October, just 2 weeks ago. So now, Bitcoin has not only had its golden cross, but also gotten over the 200-day moving average and clearly is getting above it. So I think the sign now is very clear. Don't overthink this. Bitcoin is starting at least a medium-term uptrend, right? When I say medium term, I mean that even if you take this bear market rally we had from the beginning of the year, that was still from January until August. So that was a 7-month long period where Bitcoin was doing really well, and you are best off holding Bitcoin and betting on the upside and speculating on altcoins because altcoins were all doing really well in this good market conditions. Well, now the good market conditions are back. Bitcoin is above the 200 moving average and the golden cross is here. So at least I'm looking at maybe 6-month period where Bitcoin is going to be in an uptrend. Very long term, could there be another fake out? Sure. There is not a guarantee that this will lead to the 2 years of bull market where the death cross never happens again until 2025. There's a decent chance of that, but there's no guarantee. That's why if you plan to follow this golden cross signal, you have to keep these two average lines and this signal indicator on your chart and make sure that you watch out for the potential death cross just in case Bitcoin drops down very sharply and then another death cross happens in the next few months. Then, well, you can use that next death cross signal to save yourself and potentially cut losses and then wait for another opportunity. As long as you know how the signal works and you follow it strictly, even if this isn't the start of the bull run, you only risk maybe 10-20% of drawdown. That is it. And that is always worth it to potentially be able to catch majority of the next bull run. Okay, so that's everything on the golden cross and death cross. I do think this is a very useful signal long term. Don't treat this as like some overused, over talked about signal and you just ignore it because everyone already knows it. This is not a very frequent signal. This signal only fires, like I said, like 4 to 6 times every cycle. You just have to know how to use it long term, and you have to pair it with a golden cross, with a death cross, then you are good. And as long as you focus on long term with this, it's a really strong signal. Before I end, make sure to follow me on Twitter at virtualbacon0x and check out all of our stuff, all of our links on virtualbacon.com. Make sure to join our Discord as well, discord.gg/virtualbacon. We have our free altcoin trading and Bitcoin trading alerts, as well as altcoin alpha that I post for my personal investing, all in our Discord. So make sure to join the community and have a good discussion. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers. Bye-bye.